Welcome to Soul Forum. Good to have you today. Whether you're with us on, let's see, what is it, YouTube. So if you're deciding to watch this via YouTube, or if you're pre-watching this and coming to our Sunday experience where we get to have a conversation about all this, my hope is that just the conversation we have in the next 20 minutes or so can just help us, orient a little bit more fully into yet another journey down the river. I must admit, I was hoping that maybe we could move beyond this idea of how we each arrive inside of the present moment with all that we are, the sort of living into the eternal now. But clearly, after some of the conversations we've had so far, I think the collective wisdom was to spend one more episode or conversation kind of just digging in a little bit deeper to this notion of why and what is it about being present, fully present in the moment that you are having. It's not like planning for the future. It's not like thinking about all the regrets from the past. It's just this full, intense engagement with the now. Why does that matter? And one of the things that came up for me as I've been thinking about this is I've encouraged people all along this conversation as, this is not wisdom that I dredged up, but really more and more I heard that this capacity to kind of slow down, to slow your pacing down, the way in which you move through the world down. I heard that over and over again from people who I considered had a kind of a very deep and broad sense of their own soul. And so I knew all along there's something about kind of the pacing of life, particularly in our time, that is so frenetic and maybe so driven and so linear and so linked to chronology that just simply slowing down was a way to begin to be more aware and conscious of your sense of who you are in context, right? The way in which you orient to world. So I knew that was a thing. But I think it is only a step into what we're talking about or what we're trying to explore, and that is kind of the mechanics and the motivation and the value of how you show up fully in the moment. And if slowing down gets you to the place where you can turn the doorknob on that, that's awesome. But I think slowing down is not the end goal. It's like Brian in this last interview we had with him on thinking about the way in which art and spirituality kind of work together. He talks about art not being done just for art's sake. Art is the language he uses to express this more robust engagement with life that he's trying to have. And I think that's the same way with slowing down, right? It's a tool to get there. So today I want to do a couple things. One, I want to obviously pause and have us pay attention to this one more time. So do that. And for this week, I would encourage you to kind of dive into, even if it's for a moment, one of those experiences where you really do like pause and be present in the moment, and then explore it a little bit, like what happens for you in there. Why is it important to you? What aspect of your life is it nourishing? What does it help you disconnect from? What's the character of it? Just to help everybody who's in this collective conversation find a more handles to use as they seek that for themselves. And I just think that's going to be helpful. So today I want to start with a story about meeting with an artist, and I think it helps us kind of frame this idea today. And then another poem by Wendell Berry that's also a part of the same book that we used last week, his book called Leavings. I want to take a look at one more piece of poetry that's beautiful. And then if you're on Facebook in particular, and then there on Sunday morning, I'm going to use a piece of music that's written by Johnny Flynn as a kind of centering piece, and I'll attach all that information to so you can find it as well and participate. So let me start with the story. I met with a artist just this last week, a wonderful artist who I always enjoy and am enamored with, someone who really seeks to not just create art, but does see that art is this expression out from the deepest ways that he can live and add his sense of value to not only his own life but world, right? It's really his fullest expression of self. It really gave me he always gives me a newfound appreciation for the artist, not just the art, right? That behind the art is an artist's life, and what is the character of that life. So I met him at his studio this last week, and inside that studio, he works with a lot of found materials, including the piece behind me here. He works with found materials, and it's a shop that has all sorts of welders and craftspeople in it, and artisans of all sorts of, in different disciplines gathered in this collective space. And when I got into his particular little niche, it was a fascinating moment because I was exposed to art before it was done, if you think it ever can be done. Right? I saw like the raw materials shoved into every nook and cranny. I saw the projects that he had in process and the various shapes of each of them. None of them looking anywhere near like art, right? Like what we would expect, but full of the potential energy that he's bringing to the project. So as we had this conversation, I was asking him about pieces, and he was sharing his notion of where these pieces were going. But he said something I think quite fascinating, which I think is helpful for us. Because as he started to unpack the pieces that he was working on, it wasn't just the piece itself that he was trying to describe, but a narrative or a kind of mythic journey that he had to take in order for the piece to begin to be birthed. And he talked about having, before he starts these projects or these pieces, that he has to enter into the kind of time that you and I are exploring. He has to enter into this place that's not art at all. It's not the expression of art. It is the, if you will, the listening to the siren, or the journeying into open space, or the quieting down of his soul and heart and mind and body, so that he might be open to the present in a way that something creative might begin to take root and then manifest in what's in the shop. and he did a better job telling you this story. If you were there, you would have got it, but I'm trying to explain it to you secondhand. But that experience felt exactly like what we've been talking about, right? That whatever your artistic expression might want to be in world, that you don't just, yes, you need to chip away at that, but it also has to have this grounding in this capacity for kind of, what would you call it, like, it has to be grounded on the landscape of this soul's engagement with world that requires that you simply be in the moment for your experience of the natural world, to be in the moment that is the eternal now that's holding us all, right? To allow as Sandra says, sort of and even Jen says this too, sort of the the chatter to dissolve, that moves you out of your head, feel it somewhere deeper. I think there's just some real deep truth to that. How we each, work the muscle of being able to be in that space is kind of what we've been talking about these last 3 weeks. Because I think there is an innate sense that this is a place of value. I think we know how to be there at some level, not with our heads, but in our guts. I think it's part of kind of who we are. But we don't use that muscle often enough, it feels like to me, at least for me. Often enough that it feels like it has a strong and tenuous, a strong and tenuous is not the word I'm looking for, but like this generative capacity into expression, right? Oftentimes our expression world is driven by all the, whatever's happening in your head, and then you're expressing yourself. But is there also this sense of expressing yourself that's kind of grounded in that other place? And you have to be present for that place enough, like Brian in his art, to be able to make that connection work. Okay, so I hope that's sort of what I'm toying with, and obviously the beauty of our conversation that we have, whether it be online or together, is that all of us are bringing a little different perspective on this that can't wait to stir up in the big pot and see what happens. So give that some thought. The way, even maybe imagine yourself in the shoes of the artist and put yourself in that same booth that houses all the raw materials and the tools of the trade and the noises and the sounds and the sights and the smells, but that all of that manifests in expression because the artist is able to take a step into a different sense of time and be present for self and world and awareness and insight in a different kind of way that then begins to creep into the workspace, right? That's the kind of vibe we're going for, or I think we might want to explore. I'll send this out to you, but this is a beautiful piece, another beautiful piece, and this is obviously, I worked this to kind of match what we're talking about, but this is based on Wendell Berry's poem, number 13 in his book called Leavings. And I thought it was ironic that it is tethered again to this notion of river or stream. And all this sort of started when Sandra came back from this river rafting adventure, and on the river, she disconnected from the normal construct of time and articulated that in her poem. There is something about a river or a stream that captures this capacity for just being in the moment so beautifully. Wendell Berry puts it this way: the stream that is departing from itself, the stream that is coming into itself, the stream beyond words, beginning nowhere, ending nowhere. It falls as rain. It flows in all of its length. It enters the sea. It rises into the air. It falls as rain. To the one on the shore, it comes and it goes. The immeasurable, untestable, irrecoverable moment of its passing is the present, always already past, before we can say that it is present. Was it the future then flowing into the past? Or the past flowing into future? Or both past and future at once flowing into the present that is ever passing, ever eternal? The stream, this instantaneous, abounding life. take a moment for that to sink in. And of course, I'll give you the PDF so you can read along with that. Just another, I think, beautiful way to frame the character of this opportunity that we have as humankind, right? That we individually and even collectively do not always have to operate inside of that kind of chronological time. Yes, we do that and we do it well. We're like super addicted to it. I'm super addicted to it. But you can also, as fully, enter into a different sense of time, what we've talked about in this last episode as Kairos time, sort of the birthing time, the time that the artist needs before the art manifests, right? That's what we're exploring. And however you kind of imagine your sense of soul, my guess is that it won't happen if you're simply trying to create some sort of formulaic expression of it. If it's just provided for you by an institution or a tradition, it has to be tethered to you really showing up for all that is you and yourself, your most deepest authentic self, and how you tap into that, how you tap into the moment that is this world we share, how you are present for others. All of that, I think, is a like almost like a requirement for a real sense of your soul's construct that's actually going to be functional, meaningful, powerful, effective, robust, generative for you. And so this, I do think this is a piece of the puzzle. Clearly, I think it's just like so stinking obvious that's why I think everybody's like, well, let's spend a little bit more time talking about it together. So as we gather together, whether it be online or for Sunday, just a few things to think about for you, and I'll post these also in the email. And that is to, if you have a chance to kind of just nuance your day so that you can find yourself in one of these spaces for a moment, like what, then once you get into that little space, and it doesn't have to be a long period of time, it just has to be like, oh yeah, that's what it feels like. What's kind of the value inside of that for you? What is the value for you? Can you articulate it in any way? How is it different for you than the kind of chronos time that you're in? What's your body language like in the one versus the other? What are some key experiences that come up for you as you give yourself to that moment? What arises up out of that kind of deeper place within when you're in that experience for you? That's another thing to think about. And then finally, what are sort of the tools and methods you find helpful to kind of enter into that? And we've talked about that a little bit, but I think it's good to kind of know what that is. I know Lori, my wife, was sharing the other day that for her, and this is going to seem ironic, but she has to actually schedule it, right? So she has to take her chronological day and know that she can cut out a little slice in there that she can give herself permission to enter into this space and permission to get back out and into chronological time for all the, in order to function, right? So not to get lost in that space. So, and actually it's a really great tool. If you set a Kairos timer in your day, and at 1:30 every day, you just did what you needed to do to spend 15 minutes in that space, it'd be pretty awesome. What's that look like for you? What are the tools or methods you use to arrive or suspend yourself in that space for a time? All right. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging out today and for being a part of this. Obviously, I would encourage all of you to listen to the last two episodes we did on the Soul Forum podcast with Brian, and a third one coming up where he kind of has a conversation with me about how his art takes him into this world and how how that world and that the work he does with the material he uses opens up sort of this divine frontier for him that invites him to be a more full human being, right, for the world and for future and the way he's connected to the past. It's a great couple of episodes in a Soulform podcast. Finally, as we close today, just those first few lines of the Wendell Berry poem. The stream that is departing from itself, the stream that is coming into itself, the stream beyond words, beginning nowhere, ending nowhere. It falls as rain, it flows in all of its length. It enters the sea, it rises into the air, it falls as rain. May you find this kind of sense of the natural eternal cycle that bursts these ever-present moments as you sit on the shore watching this great river, hearing this great river, feeling this great river. May it invite you into this real sense of how to be present in world. All right. Thanks for being a part of today, and we'll see you next week.